Hello there! So at the start of every year, a poll is held to showcase the previous year's best maps. It's now 2017, meaning the best of 2016 poll was just announced, and I can safely say that none of the mappers or players that I know are optimistic about its impending results. The last poll to satisfy a decent amount of people was the best beat maps of 2013. In that year, RLC's Pretender won first place by a fairly wide margin, and for good reason. To players and mappers, it was an experience unparalleled by other maps of the era. Most maps made before this are fairly simplistic and follow rigid symmetrical or distance snap-based structures, while this map led to innovation and inspired mappers, even up through today. So yeah, mappers and players both agreed that this was one of, if not the best maps of 2013, and so there wasn't much reason to complain. In 2017 now, I've heard people wish they could go back to the good old days and get results like this. But even back then, votes didn't entirely represent what experienced mappers and players considered the best beat maps. Sure, first place did, but the other positions had a bit of controversy, like fourth place here. The reason why it placed so highly among the best beat maps is because it was the most played map of the year. Voters could only vote for what maps they've played, and because this was a map of the most popular anime of the year's opening, it showed up on everyone's ballot. So even though it was just an okay map, a huge number of people had voted for it. Then there's stuff like image material. Most people who voted for it probably weren't capable of playing it, but that was its appeal. It was outstanding due to how much it pushed the limits of intensity. Because this map was relatively harder than the majority of 2013 maps, it was popularized, and in turn, people voted for it. So okay, 2013 wasn't a perfect year, but it was alright. Let's look at the best maps of 2014 now, where people actually got mad. 2014 was a year when tons of new players had joined the game. RLC's Pretender had won first place the previous year with 668 votes, while 668 votes in 2014 would land a map as the 54th best map of the year. With such a huge influx of new players, it's no mystery why the best beat map of the year was the opening to the most popular anime of the year. Tons of people played it, and therefore tons of people voted for it. Second place was in a similar boat, since it was a popular map containing difficulties from every game mode. It won Best Map of the Year for Taiko, Catch the Beat, and Mania, but votes weren't counted by mode specifically. All the votes from other mode players carried over to Standard as well, giving some pretty misrepresentative results. Third place here was probably the most problematic entry to the rankings though. The map is great, but it's one of the maps bundled with the game. Every new player played this map, giving it a lot more exposure than any other potential candidates. For 2014's poll, map quality didn't matter. It was decided by a song's popularity and a map's exposure. Yeah, people weren't very happy about that. Thankfully, the best maps of 2015 tried to remedy this by establishing a weighting system. In this system, a map's votes are weighted according to the amount of different users who played those maps and voted during the poll. This meant a map with, say, 500 votes could actually score higher than a map with 1,000 votes, because the voter play count of the first map was far lower than that of the second. It's essentially giving the underplayed maps a chance, in hopes that this year isn't a repeat of the last. Considering how much the voter turnout increased this year as well, with first place receiving almost 10,000 votes, this change was pretty necessary. Because of the new weighting system, bundled maps moved from third place in 2014 to literally last place in 2015. Of course, these bundled maps aren't that bad, but they just had so many more plays that they scored poorly. It's a worthy sacrifice to get more accurate results for other maps. Another change this year was the separation of voting by game mode. Each of the 4 modes was given its own separate poll, so there wouldn't be any misrepresentation among different mode players. Yet, even with these changes, a lot of experienced players and mappers still weren't satisfied. Popular anime openings, poor multi-mode calculations, and bundled maps were gone, but this only gave light to different maps, those focused on difficulty. Of the top 5 maps in 2014, 4 were over 7 stars, while the 5th was still above 6. While these challenging maps were still popular in earlier years, they weren't nearly as pronounced as this year. Mappers had only now been advancing beyond the previous 7-star limit set by Freedom Dive, and players loved it. Even without having the skill to play these maps, players enjoyed them due to their intensity and relation to the competitive scene of Osu. So the changes in 2015 were made to reduce the impact of popularity on the poll's results. It did partially do that, but it wasn't enough. The poll was still a popularity contest. That doesn't seem right for something called the best maps, so not many people were satisfied this year either. There were tons of maps that players and mappers I interact with considered higher quality, yet because they weren't popular with the main player base's tastes, they weren't given the light of day. Obviously. I mean, what else would you expect from a contest like this? Everyone's votes are of equal value, and nobody shares the same ideas about what makes a map good. Most people just vote for what they think is cool or fun, even if it may not be the same as what you or I think of as high quality. The Osu staff knew this last year, and it looks like they know it this year too. Right, yeah, this year. The best of 2016 poll was announced a few days ago, and there's already speculation that the results won't be satisfying. Why were results better in the past, though? Well, I think it comes down to numbers. In the past, there weren't many people who voted. The game was still relatively small, and the poll wasn't advertised as well. This wasn't on the main menu in the past, and so more casual players hadn't paid attention to the best of 2013 poll. Also, there were way less maps to vote for, and the ones that stood out were definitely known by the small amount of people who had the initiative to vote. By comparison, Osu's a lot bigger now. There's hundreds of times more people voting, and the ranking of maps is now handled by community members, rather than Osu staff. This means a lot more productivity and therefore a lot more maps. Also, fewer people share the same mapping values in this environment, and so the idea of conventionally good only exists within a small group of people, active mappers and a small minority of players. If you're expecting the best maps of the year to come from this competition, you're gonna be disappointed. The whole reason for this poll is to conglomerate community opinions on a year's worth of maps, a celebration of sorts. And even though the title Best of 2016 might not be completely accurate, it's not exactly the point either. But then, where can someone go to see the best maps of the year by conventional mapping standards? Is there no such thing as a good map anymore? Everyone's got their own thoughts about what makes a map good, but there is a group of people who share fairly similar opinions on mapping quality. Mappers. And this year, there's a way for mappers to express their opinions on the best maps, more than just this official poll. Only people with a ranked map or 100 kudos are capable of voting in this competition as a way to give credit where credit is due. By setting standards on who can vote, we'll probably see results more reflective of the best maps in this contest, rather than the official one. In the end though, nobody's forcing you to prefer one type of map over another. If you think the results of the official poll are better than those of Handsome's poll, that's fine. And if you like conventionally good maps more, that's fine too. These categories, most likely, won't ever overlap though, since it would go against the official poll's purpose to restrict who can vote for the sake of higher quality results. These polls are about seeing what a majority personally favors in maps, the official poll accounting for players, and the unofficial one accounting for mappers. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the best of polls. I've already voted in the two for this year, though I'll save talking about my choices for another time. Thanks to these guys for supporting this video, and I'll see you next week.